In the heart of Nairobi, nestled within the bustling neighborhood of Umoja, stood a modest church known as the House of Divine Grace. For many years, it remained a small and struggling place of worship, its pews often empty and its congregation sparse. However, all this changed when Pastor Mugo took the helm. Tall and charismatic, with a radiant smile and a voice that seemed to carry the weight of divine command, Pastor Mugo transformed the church. His arrival was like a breath of fresh air. The once quiet church began to buzz with activity. Sermons delivered by Pastor Mugo were powerful and moving, touching the hearts of everyone who listened. His reputation as a healer and miracle worker spread quickly. People came from near and far, hoping to witness the miracles firsthand and receive blessings from the revered pastor. With every passing week, the congregation grew. Donations poured in, and soon the church was able to expand its facilities and outreach programs. Pastor Mugo's fame spread beyond Umoja, and the House of Divine Grace became a beacon of hope for many. Yet, as the church flourished, whispers began to circulate among the elders. They noticed Pastor Mugo's increasing demands for more contributions and the elaborate lifestyle he began to lead. Among the congregation was a young woman named Wanja. She was intelligent, ambitious, and drawn to Pastor Mugo's charisma and vision. Over time, she became close to him, and their relationship blossomed into a secret romance. Wanja admired Pastor Mugo deeply, believing in his mission and his apparent connection to the divine. She never suspected that beneath his charming exterior, Pastor Mugo harbored a dark and sinister secret. As the church grew in fame and fortune, the atmosphere in Umoja began to change. What was once a peaceful neighborhood now buzzed with activity and excitement. Yet, beneath the surface, a sense of unease started to creep in. Children began to disappear, one by one, leaving their families in despair and the community in fear. The authorities were baffled, and no one seemed to have any clues about the kidnappings. The disappearances were sporadic at first, but as the months went by, the pattern became clear. It always seemed to happen after major church events or particularly powerful sermons by Pastor Mugo. The community was gripped by fear, and rumors began to circulate about the possible involvement of supernatural forces. Despite the growing panic, the House of Divine Grace continued to attract new members, and Pastor Mugo's influence grew stronger. Wanja, who had grown deeply attached to Pastor Mugo, began to notice subtle changes in his behavior. He became more secretive and often disappeared for long periods without explanation. Wanja's curiosity and concern grew, but she pushed aside her doubts, convincing herself that it was the weight of his divine mission that caused his erratic behavior. One evening, after a particularly troubling sermon in which Pastor Mugo seemed distracted and anxious, Wanja decided to confront him. She waited until the congregation had left and approached him. "Mugo, is everything all right? You've been acting strangely lately," she asked, her voice filled with genuine concern. Pastor Mugo looked at her with a forced smile. "It's just the burden of leading this congregation, Wanja. Sometimes the weight of it all is overwhelming," he replied, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of something darker. Despite his reassurances, Wanja couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. She began to watch him more closely, hoping to find answers to the growing unease that gnawed at her. Little did she know that her search for the truth would lead her down a path of horror and revelation. One restless night, Wanja found herself unable to sleep. She tossed and turned, her mind filled with troubling thoughts and unanswered questions. The unease that had been growing within her reached a tipping point. She decided to take a walk to clear her head, hoping that the cool night air would calm her restless spirit. As she wandered through the quiet streets of Umoja, she found herself drawn towards the church. A faint, flickering light emanated from within the building, catching her attention. Curious and feeling a strange compulsion, she quietly approached the entrance. The door was slightly ajar, and she slipped inside, her footsteps silent on the cold stone floor. The sight that greeted her was one of unimaginable horror. In the dim glow of candlelight, she saw Pastor Mugo standing at the altar, surrounded by eerie symbols drawn in what looked like blood. He was chanting in a language she did not understand, his voice low and menacing. Before him lay the lifeless body of a young child, pale and still. Wanja's heart pounded in her chest as she struggled to comprehend the scene before her. She stifled a scream, her hand trembling as she covered her mouth. She watched in paralyzed terror as Pastor Mugo continued his ritual, his eyes gleaming with a sinister light. Realizing the danger she was in, Wanja slowly backed away, her mind racing. She slipped out of the church, unnoticed, and ran home, her thoughts a whirlwind of fear and disbelief. The man she loved, the man who had brought so much hope and joy to the community, was a monster. He was responsible for the disappearances, using innocent children for his dark rituals to gain power and fame. The following days were a blur for Wanja. She knew she had to expose Pastor Mugo, but the fear of his influence and the potential danger to herself and others paralyzed her. She couldn't go to the police without solid evidence, and she feared that the pastor's charismatic hold on the community would protect him from any accusations. Determined to uncover the truth and bring justice to the lost children, Wanja began to gather evidence. She started by speaking discreetly to parents who had lost their children, encouraging them to share their stories and suspicions. She visited their homes, listened to their heart-wrenching tales, and documented every detail meticulously in a journal. The more she learned, the more her heart ached. The parents spoke of their missing children with tears and trembling voices. They described how their children had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a void of despair and unanswered questions. Some parents had noticed strange behavior in their children before they disappeared: nightmares, sudden fear of attending church, and even odd markings on their bodies. Wanja also kept a close watch on Pastor Mugo. She noted his comings and goings, the secretive meetings he held, and the late-night visits to the church. She documented everything, determined to build a case strong enough to withstand scrutiny. One evening, she managed to sneak into Pastor Mugo's office while he was away. She rifled through his papers, finding cryptic notes and references to ancient rituals. Her hands shook as she took photos of the documents with her phone, knowing that these could be crucial pieces of evidence. With her journal filled with testimonies, photos, and observations, Wanja knew it was time to take the next step. She couldn't do it alone, she needed allies. She decided to approach the elders of the church, hoping that they would listen to her and help expose Pastor Mugo. On a Sunday, after a particularly rousing sermon, Wanja mustered the courage to speak to the elders. She waited until the congregation had left and approached them, her heart pounding in her chest. "Elders, I need to speak with you urgently. It's about Pastor Mugo," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. The elders, intrigued and concerned by her serious tone, agreed to meet her in the church hall. Wanja took a deep breath and began to present her findings. She showed them her journal, the testimonies from the parents, the photos of the cryptic notes, and recounted what she had witnessed that night at the altar. The elders listened in stunned silence, their faces reflecting a mix of shock, disbelief, and horror. They had known Pastor Mugo for years, had trusted him and believed in his divine mission. The revelations were almost too much to bear. One of the elders, a stern man named Elder Kamau, finally spoke. "These are serious accusations, Wanja. If what you say is true, we must act immediately. But we need more than just testimonies and notes. We need irrefutable proof." Wanja nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "I know, Elder Kamau. That's why I've been gathering evidence. I believe Pastor Mugo is planning another ritual soon. If we can catch him in the act, we can bring him to justice." The elders agreed to help Wanja, their resolve strengthening with each passing moment. They decided to confront Pastor Mugo and involve the authorities, determined to protect their community and bring an end to the horrors that had plagued Umoja. The elders, along with Wanja, devised a plan to catch Pastor Mugo in the act. They decided to monitor his movements closely and gather additional evidence before confronting him. The community was still in shock from the revelations, but they knew they had to act swiftly and carefully to ensure justice was served. Elder Kamau, along with 2 other trusted elders, took on the responsibility of keeping a close watch on Pastor Mugo. They coordinated with Wanja, sharing information and planning their moves meticulously. They knew they had to be discreet to avoid arousing suspicion. Meanwhile, Wanja continued to gather more testimonies from parents and other members of the congregation. She visited the homes of those who had lost their children, encouraging them to come forward and share their stories. The parents, initially hesitant and fearful, began to open up, finding strength in their collective grief and the hope of justice. One evening, as Wanja was compiling her notes, she received a call from Elder Kamau. "Wanja, we've noticed Pastor Mugo acting suspiciously. He's been visiting the church late at night more frequently. We believe he's planning another ritual soon. We need to act quickly." Wanja's heart raced as she listened. "What should we do, Elder Kamau?" "We need to gather the congregation and inform them. We'll need their support and witness when we confront Pastor Mugo. We'll also involve the police to ensure he's arrested immediately." The plan was set in motion. Wanja and the elders worked tirelessly to spread the word discreetly among the congregation. They explained the situation and urged everyone to come to the church on the appointed night. The community, though shocked and heartbroken, agreed to stand together. The fateful night arrived, shrouded in a tense and ominous atmosphere. The congregation, along with the elders and a few police officers, gathered quietly outside the church. The air was thick with anticipation and fear as they waited for Pastor Mugo to make his move. Inside the church, Wanja and Elder Kamau hid in the shadows, watching as Pastor Mugo began his preparations for the ritual. The pastor seemed oblivious to their presence, his focus entirely on the dark task before him. He chanted in the same eerie language Wanja had heard before, his voice echoing through the empty hall. As the ritual progressed, Wanja signaled to the police officers outside. They moved swiftly, entering the church and surrounding Pastor Mugo. The congregation followed, their faces a mix of anger, sorrow, and determination. Pastor Mugo looked up, startled and furious. "What is the meaning of this? How dare you interrupt a sacred ritual?" he shouted, his eyes blazing with anger. Elder Kamau stepped forward, his voice firm and resolute. "We know the truth, Mugo. Your dark secrets have been exposed. You are responsible for the disappearances of our children, and you will answer for your crimes." The police officers moved in, restraining Pastor Mugo as he struggled and cursed. The congregation watched in stunned silence, their hearts heavy with the weight of the truth. Wanja stepped forward, her voice steady despite the turmoil within her. "Mugo, your reign of terror ends tonight. You will face justice for the lives you've taken and the pain you've caused." The arrest of Pastor Mugo sent shockwaves through Umoja and beyond. The once revered pastor was now the center of a national scandal. The media descended upon the community, eager to uncover every detail of the dark story. The trial of Pastor Mugo became a high-profile case, drawing attention from across the country. In the courtroom, the evidence against Pastor Mugo was overwhelming. The testimonies from grieving parents, the journal compiled by Wanja, and the damning photographs of the rituals all painted a horrifying picture of a man who had betrayed his congregation in the most heinous way possible. Wanja was called to testify, her courage and determination evident to all. She recounted her discovery of the rituals, the gathering of evidence, and the night they confronted Pastor Mugo. Her voice was steady, but her eyes reflected the deep pain and betrayal she felt. The defense tried to paint Pastor Mugo as a misunderstood visionary, claiming that the rituals were part of ancient and misunderstood traditions. But the evidence was too strong, and the jury was not swayed. The testimonies of the parents, who spoke of their missing children with heartbreaking clarity, left a lasting impact. After several weeks of intense proceedings, the verdict was reached. Pastor Mugo was found guilty on multiple counts of murder and child endangerment. The judge sentenced him to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The community of Umoja breathed a collective sigh of relief, though the scars of the past would take time to heal. With Pastor Mugo behind bars, Umoja faced the daunting task of healing and rebuilding trust within the community. The House of Divine Grace, once a symbol of hope, was now a place tainted by dark memories. The congregation, though relieved that justice had been served, struggled to move forward. The new pastor appointed to lead the church was a gentle and compassionate man named Pastor Njenga. He was determined to restore the faith and trust that had been shattered. He focused on healing and reconciliation, encouraging the congregation to come together and support one another. Wanja continued to play a crucial role in the healing process. She organized support groups for the families affected by the disappearances, offering a safe space for them to share their grief and find solace. She also worked closely with Pastor Njenga to rebuild the church's outreach programs, ensuring they were focused on genuine acts of kindness and support for the community. The journey towards healing was long and arduous. The families of the lost children carried their grief with them, but they found strength in each other and in the support of their community. Slowly, the wounds began to heal, and the House of Divine Grace started to regain its standing as a place of worship and refuge. As the years passed, Umoja began to heal. The memory of Pastor Mugo's betrayal remained, but it became a reminder of the importance of vigilance and integrity. The community grew stronger, united by their shared experiences and their determination to protect their children and uphold justice. Wanja's bravery and resilience became a beacon of hope for many. She continued to live in Umoja, dedicating her life to helping others and ensuring that the memory of the lost children was never forgotten. She found love again, this time with a kind-hearted man named Karanja, who supported her unconditionally. The House of Divine Grace flourished under Pastor Njenga's leadership. The congregation grew, not because of grand miracles or charismatic leaders, but because of the genuine care and support offered to everyone who walked through its doors. The church became a true sanctuary, a place of healing and hope. Wanja and Karanja married in a beautiful ceremony at the church, surrounded by their community. It was a day filled with joy and love, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. As they exchanged vows, Wanja felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. She knew that, despite the darkness of the past, the future was filled with light and promise. In the end, the tale of Pastor Mugo and Wanja became a legend in Umoja, a story told to every new generation as a reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface and the power of courage and truth. The church, once tainted by evil, became a sanctuary of hope and redemption, a testament to the resilience and strength of the community. Wanja's story was a symbol of bravery and the enduring power of truth. And though the shadows of the past would always linger, the light of the present shone brighter, illuminating a future where justice and love prevailed. The community of Umoja thrived, united by their shared experiences and their unwavering commitment to protecting and supporting one another.